So, call to order for Basalt Planning and Zoning on Tuesday, June 29th. It is 6:05, and we'll take a roll call.
Yes, Bill Marin, absent. Kyle Oberketter.
Here.
Gino Rossetti.
Here.
Eric Volzek.
Here.
Michelle Tebow.
Here.
Bernie Grauer.
Here.
Rob Levitt, absent. Cindy Hirschfeld.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum, and Cindy will be able to vote on any items on the agenda.
Great. First item tonight is a public hearing on the Basalt Center Circle application. And is the applicant going to present, or staff first?
Staff's gonna go first, James is gonna introduce it, followed by our applicants. We will be having a public hearing, and at the end of the public hearing, we'll have a motion to continue. But we'll have P&Z questions and P&Z, a discussion about what they'd like to see at the next meeting and that type of thing. So James?
Absolutely.
Let's see, got the Zoom set up just to make sure. This is a public hearing on an application that was submitted by BCC Basalt LLC, and it's for rezoning and CSC sketch plan review to construct a new grocery store of approximately 9,000 square feet and 70 apartment units on the upper floors of the building. And it's proposed on the Basalt Center Circle property, or also known as the BCC property, that used to house Clark's Market as well as Habitat Restore, and that currently houses Jimbo's Liquor as well as the BLT market area and decorative materials there to the east of the building. So this evening, staff recommends treating this meeting as an introduction meeting to the application, as well as an introduction to the discussion items, and to identify any additional information that P&Z may need to make a recommendation at a future meeting. Staff will briefly introduce the project and discussion items, and then the applicant can go into more detail on the application itself. As far as the land use requests and the process are concerned, the applicant has requested a rezoning of the property from the C2 zone district to the community serving commercial, which is the CSC zone district. And they've also requested CSC sketch plan review. The sketch plan requires one round of review by the Planning and Zoning Commission and Town Council, and then the applicant would need a second round of review by the P&Z and Town Council as part of the final plan review. The proposal, as noted at the site visit, is a proposal to remove the existing building and replace it with a grocery of approximately 9,000 square feet on the first floor here, facing Two Rivers Road, as well as to construct an at-grade parking facility in this area to the east of the building that's proposed to house the grocery. In that garage, it's proposed to include 62 spaces for use by the residential uses that are above the grocery store. The applicant is also proposing a public courtyard in the front of the grocery area that has a patio, and then also reconfiguring the common parking lot that is around the building to soften the asphalt area, as well as to protect the existing tree that's in the middle of the parking lot. As I noted, and as was noted at the site visit, the parking lot is commonly owned by the other members of the subdivision, and it's managed by the HOA, and the HOA has provided approval for use of the parking lot. And so I'll let the applicant get into more detail on the discussion on the presentation as part of their comments. But in terms of discussion items, staff has identified a series of discussion items that are in your packet. The first is consistency with the master plan. Redevelopment of the Clark's Market property was listed as one of the top 13 projects in the master plan, as you can see here on the screen. There were several development scenarios that were considered in the master plan and studied. This proposal that is before you is most like the retail anchor option that was in the master plan. And the master plan prescribed this as a good place for density and provided a density range of between 52 and 134 units, in which the proposed 70 units falls within that category. The master plan also identifies this as an appropriate location to consider 4 stories, and staff lists the series of master plan goals that the project has the potential to satisfy as part of your staff memo. With regard to compliance with the CSC zone district, the town engaged in the R-Town master plan several years ago to come up with a vision and goals for the downtown area, including the BCC property. It covered desired uses, potential dimensional requirements, and required pedestrian connections. And subsequently, the CSC zone district was amended to be consistent with the R-Town plan, and it was included as a as a tool to be used for the redevelopment of the BCC property. The proposal, staff finds, is generally consistent with the CSC zone districts in the R-Town plan. There may need to be consideration of amendments to the CSC zone district as part of the final plan related to the pedestrian requirements between Midland Avenue and the river, as the applicants don't control the properties adjacent to Midland Avenue and the river. Related to other discussion topics, there's the grocery store composition. The applicant has proposed parameters on the composition of the grocery store after discussions with staff in the pre-application phases, with the intent to ensure that it is a true grocery store. The parameters include that at least 70% of the retail is primary goods, with only 30% allowed to be secondary goods like pharmaceuticals and alcohol. Staff and the applicant are still working on this item and can provide more information at the next meeting, but it kind of gives a framework for the grocery to be a true grocery store. In terms of the affordable housing, they're proposing for 15% of the residential units and 15% of the residential square footage to be deed-restricted housing, and they're proposing to dedicate a 1.5% real estate transfer assessment to be used for affordable housing creation purposes, as is included in the town code. The Basalt Affordable Community Housing Committee, BAC, reviewed the proposal and was supportive of the mix of affordable housing, which includes studios, in which we have virtually no studios in the current affordable housing inventory. A caveat to BAC's comments were that they encourage the applicant to continue to strive to meet the livability standards that are in the community housing guidelines, and they continue to suggest that the applicant study the potential to get to 50 square foot of storage for the affordable housing units. So that's part of their comments. With regards to the typologies and the architecture, the R-Town Vitality area is the typology in which this site is located. And this typology discusses consideration for 4-story buildings, as long as the upper floors are set back from the lower floor. And the building is proposed to be consistent with that, as you see in the renderings of the building. The upper floors are set back. It also calls for simple building forms and facade articulation, as is included in the design. Other topics for discussion are the access and parking. The applicant has proposed to reconfigure the parking lot, which is a common parking lot, and also to build at-grade parking in this area that's shown in yellow on the parking map. In addition, there's a portion of the parking, as you saw out in the field at the site visit, that's actually in the town's right-of-way. Here is the town's right-of-way line, right here on the site plan, as you can see on my cursor. And so these parking spaces and a portion of these parking spaces are actually in the town's right-of-way. And so the HOA is working on a license agreement application to legalize use of that right-of-way for parking purposes as they're currently configured. Access-wise, the fire district and the town engineer have expressed some concern about some of the turning radiuses into and out of the garage. The applicant is doing a little work to ensure the turning radius works, so that's being evaluated. With regards to pedestrian access, which is another discussion topic, the applicant has added several new pedestrian links to the building, including this link to Two Rivers Road. They're also proposing to add crosswalks across the parking lot to better delineate the pedestrian access along Midland Avenue into the project. And then there's also a proposal to add a pedestrian access way on the east side of the building, as we saw out in the field at the site visit. And so there's new access to the back of the Tempranillo kind of parking lot area. They haven't went all the way to the river or to Midland Avenue, as they don't control the property adjacent to the river or along Midland Avenue. Post also, the Parks, Open Space, and Trails Committee provided comments, and those comments were that the applicant in town should continue to pursue the connections to Midland Avenue as well as to the river. And then also they suggested that town and the applicant see if they can pursue additional pedestrian access to the Taylor Creek fly shop area to the east. Additionally, post comments included look at potential for including raised crosswalks in the parking lot to better kind of define the pedestrian access across the parking lot. And then they also suggested to consider increasing the size of some of these landscaping islands in the parking lot to make them more of a significant green space. Other discussion items included green aspects of the proposal. The applicant is proposing the residential to be all electric and to have photovoltaic PV panels on the roof. There's also a requirement that the applicant will need to meet the SBR sustainable building requirements of the town. The applicants have also proposed electric car chargers and electric bike charging, and that will be more detailed as part of their proposal. So this evening, staff recommends that you hear more detail on the application proposal from the applicants, and then ask questions of the applicants, and then take public comments because it is a public hearing. And then you could provide initial P&Z discussion and identify any additional information that you think you might need for the next P&Z meeting. Staff anticipates providing draft conditions at the next meeting for P&Z to consider. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the development team and the applicants. Tim and Andrew, would you like to introduce your team?
Sure. I'm Andrew Light. This is my partner, Tim Belinsky here. Thank you very much for your consideration tonight. We're very, very excited to be here. We both have lived here for decades and have stared at this building now for 10 years. And in the meantime, Tim has built, this will be his 4th apartment building in Basalt. And I've done a few apartment buildings. And he also has a real good handle on retail from being the manager at Willits for the last 15 years or however it's been. And we're really excited about this location for the concept that we proposed. I think James summarized it very well. It's 70 apartments and a modern experiential grocery store, which we'll get into, but I think there's a, if you go down to Denver or you go to other mountain markets, there are grocery stores that have a lot of reasons to go there besides getting a bottle of milk. It's getting food, it's getting something to drink, it's lingering, and we really think this plan hits two of these, in the summary of the master plan, which Heather was very involved in. I'll introduce our team in a second. But the themes of the master plan, two of them are allow density to drive revitalization and create a there destination for residents and guests. And so that's really what we think our plan is addressing. And we've had quite a few people since we've announced this come up and just say, you know, can I help you? What are the ideas? We love this idea. So we're really excited about it. I'd like to introduce our team. Tim and I are obviously very local. I'll let you know our investors are local, our lenders are local, so we've got a very local team in that regard. Heather Henry with Connect One was very involved in the master planning, so she'll do a lot of the presentation tonight. She's really done a great job of incorporating the concepts that went into the planning that went into the CSE zone creation, which was, you know, approved unanimously by town council. So we think the density and the uses that we're proposing are consistent with the master planning that had a lot of thought going to it. Scott McHale here and where's Seth? He's here with us with Z Group Architects. Are both also local and have done a lot of work designing units that are very efficient and very livable. And so that's how we check them out. And we've got several projects with them, and I think you'll be impressed with their work too. I'd like to just say, I think the concept of sustainability in its broadest sense is what we really want to try to push with this application. It's not just the meeting the building code or meeting the all-electric residential building or having as much solar as you can. It's really creating something that, a place where people come, and these are units that are small and they'll be rented. They're not going to be vacant. They're not going to be someone that locks it, you know, September 1st and leaves. These will be people in this building that will be living here and supporting the other businesses. So we really think that that's a great fit for the neighborhood. Anything else to add, Tim?
We've also assembled Sopers Engineering, who knows the site really well, and they're based in the valley. And we continue to just rely on all the team members who have successfully brought along other projects for the community in the Mid-Valley. So we're pretty pleased with how it's going so far. And we also would like to thank the owners of the two properties that are part of the assemblage. It's you know, some very cooperative folks who want to see this happen, and they've had their years of having those properties for their use, but now I think they see also how promising it could be for this to be added to downtown's vibrancy.
I will add that we have just completed an apartment building in Willits and have just been leasing it up or listening to the people coming and renting those units. And I think being right near a bus stop is so huge. So I think that's not just good for town, but people will want to be here. I mean, they'll want to be near the restaurants, near their offices, as there's more offices coming in. And, you know, we think this is a great plan for these unit types that we've proposed. The grocery store, we will get more into that, but I think we're very, very excited about that part, and I think it'll be a reason for people to come into town and to linger, and that's the goal. So, do you want to take over here? Sure. I'll hand it to Heather.
James, you can pull that up and probably just go to slide 3.
Okay, I need to share it just a quick second for our Zoom.
Sure.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for the time this evening, and thank you for our site visit. Hopefully that was useful. This first slide we're going to walk through was one side of your placemat. Feel free to use that at home while you eat dinner. It's really attractive. So now that we were out there, I think it's helpful to be back in here and just walk through a few of these things
very quickly. James went through a couple, and so I think we can move really quickly. Blue lines over the Google Earth are the property lines. So as we were out there, we were kind of describing the HOA and what is effectively the commonly owned parking lot of the entire HOA in the Basalt Center Circle. So you can just trace this whole inner area here. Okay, and so this is the collectively owned parking lot, multiple entities, comprised of essentially all of the uses that you see out at Basalt Center Circle, each have their own site area, essentially, okay? So our proposal is within this blue line, including decorative materials. So that is decorative materials, this is the old Clark's Market. So as we get into some of these other pieces around, as James mentioned, perhaps thinking about how we tweak the language of the CSC, for this particular parcel, thinking about how to connect Midland up here to the river down here. If you think of it in such a literal term, right, we don't really control any of those edges. That said, from our perspective as land planners, landscape architects, we've really tried to do everything we can. So you'll see these connections we've made through the property and just making it safer to walk through. Anything that we could do, we've really tried to take those steps. Next slide, James. So the master plan. It's really exciting for me, obviously, to continue this story, right, of having gone through the master plan with you guys and now thinking about this project that was the top of the list throughout that process. It was get something moving on Basalt River Park, and boy, we'd really love to redevelop Clark's Market. And so much of that is about the physical aspect of that building, having seen its heyday and lived through that, and now kind of being ready for the next thing, but also just the sense of vibrancy that's missing. It feels like a hole there, right? Except for the one facade where we get to go to BLT, if you're Scott, apparently every day. So now that he moved his office to downtown Basalt. We just wanted to pull this up kind of as that reminder, and again, James referenced this. So we had 3 options that were studied on this parcel during the master plan process, and this is most similar to the option number A, which was mixed use. And if you look at kind of, our video is over it a little bit, but thinking about what were the uses that were most appropriate for this particular parcel, and you can see this idea of mixed use, that people really wanted to see housing, but then also see grocery store, bring some grocery store back into downtown has been at the top of everyone's list. And so much of that is related to the people that live here and just needing that service. I may not get my 2 weeks worth of groceries, but boy, wouldn't it be great if we can just have that little bit of service here. So we just kind of wanted to pull that up. Down below is also just that overall connectivity and kind of thinking about this parcel, how it can connect to Two Rivers Road, how the pedestrian, which is the dotted lines, continue all the way across the street to Basalt River Park, et cetera. So just be thinking about that bigger context as we get into the kind of closer up site plan. Next slide. So one of the other things we did in the master plan, just to make sure that the intent was never to change the typologies, but just to kind of check in with the community on some of these key parcels in terms of what did folks see and what was most appropriate. And so as you got to things like, really dense, very urban feeling, some of the lowest votes, very modern architecture that wasn't really reflective of some of the history of downtown Basalt, really low votes. And then that little pesky thing, there we go. So then when you look at what got the most votes, that is a 3-story building with a 4th story set back on the top. It has modern influences and was reflective of the past, however, with some of, say, brick highlights, things like that. And so you will see the respect, honestly, that Z Group and Scott and Seth have given to what came out of this master plan and what the community said they were really striving for in terms of the architecture. And then obviously over on the side, what were some of the key factors in the anchor use in the CSC zone district, such as grocery, et cetera. Next slide. So this is, I think we have this sort of in-between where we pulled some of the information from the 2020 strategic work plan for the town council, and then now they've just shifted over to their 2021. But that said, what we were really excited about is thinking about, really at the top of the list under the built environment was working with Basalt Center Circle on how to revitalize the farmers market parcel. And then even the second, thinking about reevaluating the affordable housing program and how can we get more affordable housing in downtown is a really big deal. And I think what excites us a lot is to think about this rental product. Other than folks renting and then the housing coming in over by Stubby's, this would be one of the next most significant projects. In the master plan, if you remember as well, when we had the dot voting exercise over in RMI, and we were asking the community, like, what does vitality really mean? And some of the top of the list votes were that you have this diversity. You have cultural diversity, you have economic diversity, you have age diversity. So having families, having young people that are gonna rent those kinds of studios and the smaller spaces, they're out all day, they're out recreating, they're going to be the ones that are then kind of populating town and giving it that sense of life. So we're really excited about especially the mix and the rental that these guys are bringing to this project. Next slide. Okay, so we get into the fun stuff, which is great pictures and kind of a really exciting design dialogue. For us on the design team, from the architecture and the landscape architecture, thinking about the site planning, it's really been about that sense of placemaking. So how do you take this property that folks have been looking at for a long time and thinking about its kind of slow slide downhill, and how do you revitalize it and think of it in a totally new way? And so some of the imagery from a site perspective, and then Scott has some of his own, really bringing a lot of color, a lot of punch, a lot of excitement to this corner. Thinking about community gathering space, and we sort of waved our arms and talked about it when we were out there, but we'll show it on the site plan. The railroad, so this really fascinating aspect of the right-of-way swooping through the site, and what did that really mean? Well, that was the railroad right-of-way as it extended up Midland. And so for us, maybe not quite so literal as this is the Highline Park in New York, right? So very literal, where they left pieces of the tracks. And so we'll have to be more evocative of that, maybe a little bit more cheeky in terms of how we take a nod to that. And then lastly is we have to acknowledge we have a lot of parking, so what can we do to relieve that? Any changes that we can make. Next slide. So we'll just go through, again, we walked out here, we waved our arms a lot for the site plan, but I'll walk you through it just as we look at it in plan view. Thinking about, let's think more instead of where we started, let's just think about we'll start at this corner. So this is obviously the corner of Two Rivers and Midland. We have Basalt River Park, hopefully breaking ground any day now across the street. So as a pedestrian, folks are crossing the street here. And we'll kind of think about that pedestrian experience first, just because I like people better than cars. So creating these safe connections, we want to do new crosswalks here all the way up Midland, and then a connection into our space here. And so if you remember, we talked about hinging here. So this would be existing the corner of the building and kind of swinging the parking lot out, so that you maintain a traditional normal drive aisle now, 24-foot drive aisle, and swing this out, create the parking here. We were able to do that, and I think maybe we lost one space by the time we created a little safety factor here, so people driving out weren't right at the end of the parking. So we lost one space, so it was fabulous because now you have this really wonderful, and we have likened it, not because we want to be like Aspen, but the sense of the Paradise Corner. So you had this amazing corner in Aspen, and that Paradise Corner has always been where locals and visitors, everyone was able to mingle. And it created a relief from the building behind it, and you got to linger there whether you bought something in Paradise or not. So that is absolutely the intent of this space, is now you think about all these pedestrian connections through here, whether you've gone to the grocery or not. the whole idea is that you can linger here. And if you've gone to the grocery and gotten something to eat, all the better, and you get to hang out there. And thinking about the residents, even if they're able to step outside, the kind of population now that'll be around this, I think will be high enough to keep this as a really lively corner. So we created these safe connections into that space. Thinking about kind of moving off and on Two Rivers Road and just connecting the river to Midland, just getting to this site in a safer way was really important. So this is a brand new connection. This is the one where we were standing at the corner and Tim and I were kind of across from each other here. And so that's where that space is. We can hit this spot right in between some of the existing trees. And then everything that you see that kind of has this stipple on it, these are now safe sidewalk zones. So now we can create another crosswalk here, someone can walk down here, and we've got the last kind of connection here to the existing stair. Safe crosswalk here, so if I've either parked out here, et cetera, I'm on a sidewalk, and I connect to this sidewalk along the front of the building. Created as much relief and green space as we could. So here, everything that you see in the green hatch, being able to do tree islands, really take up some of the space out here, just a few parking spaces, and then we can, again, create this green space. Keep the tree that's out there, add a few, still deciding what we do with this. Probably it's very useful for these folks, whether it's to, I don't know if we're allowing dogs, but to like pop outside and, you know, the dog can take a quick walk, like that kind of a thing. When you have this kind of residential, just being able to pop outside, as Katie Tabor is here from Connect One as well, that you can do in your pajama bottoms and not feel weird is really important. And then if we didn't try to push it though, really if you're gonna go further or go for a genuine walk or take your kids out to play, we've got the huge park across the street. So we want these spaces. We've got another residential open space here. It's kind of tucked into the parking area. And again, these are gonna be fairly utilitarian. So I can pop outside and do the things that I do outside that I'm not doing inside, okay? You can see with the arrows how we've reconfigured just the circulation within the parking lot. A little bit different than the diagram that James had. We are gonna do these so they are somewhat pull-through. So hopefully there's not a lot of trailers taking up the parking spaces out there, but we do know that that happens. And the HOA really requested, hey, can these at least be pull-through? So if the trailers are waiting for their clients or they're just popping into the grocery, et cetera, a really easy spot for them to park. I think we can, oh, and the last one. So our loading area, we pointed to this as we were standing here. So as we mentioned, this is the canopy for the gas station. So being able to pull in and out, you can see now 27.5 feet. So still leaving really generous space through here, swing lanes, et cetera. And we've done all the turning radius. So trucks can also pull in here, back into the loading area. So the loading and trash is essentially staying where it is now, and kind of keeping that site and land use. As you circulate along the building, we also were standing at this corner and talking about remaking this connection all the way, hopefully, through to Midland. At this point, we'll take that connection to the property line, and the HOA has agreed to that, and kind of reopening that door, so to speak. And so now thinking about how that can again come through, and you're back up here, and you're down to the river, et cetera. So we're taking that first step that I think is a big win, actually, to even just get that reopened. And I think next slide, although we went through most of this, so this is just a highlight in blue of those pedestrian connections. We also highlighted a little bit the turning radius that we were mentioning. Some of this has been for fire. You can see the connections here. So this is into the parking structure, and then this is an out only, just to make sure that we have a secondary egress. Scott will walk you through what's happening on that kind of ground floor in a little bit more detail. And next slide. So we'll go through these. I'm going to go through them from the site perspective. So I'm standing as if I was a car pulling off of Midland now and into the project. On my right is the connection that would go across the four-way intersection. And so you would have pedestrians safely crossing here now, and they might cross here. So this whole space now is into that kind of triangular little courtyard, this sense of place that welcomes you first as a pedestrian scale into the grocery instead of just kind of cars right in front of everything. Next slide. So this is the new connection. So this would be if I was a pedestrian and I had just walked down off of Two Rivers and into the project. So I may be taking a left and entering the grocery store. The primary entrance to the grocery store is now facing that view that we were just looking at. So it's really facing Midland and kind of embracing that. That said, we still wanted to make sure that the whole facade, especially on this lower level, was really inviting. So we have this little nook here. This may end up as a bench. It probably may end up more part of our bike infrastructure. So we've got bike infrastructure for the residents within the buildings, and then we've got a whole series of areas where we're looking at the bike infrastructure around the property as well. I think a lot of that is lacking right now. And so that nook may become that. And if I take a right, I'm gonna go down to the residential entrance, which is right here. And next slide. And now I'm standing just about at the hotel and kind of looking across. So here is the exit only from the parking. This is now our connection back through to the Tempranillo parking lot, et cetera. So really clear sidewalk. It's clear, clean, feels like a real connection through here. And then this is the facade with tree islands. We'll be looking at posts, comments to see where we can, and maybe just that we aggregate two of these so that we can kind of do a more significant tree island. And I think that's it for me. Go to the next slide. So we're gonna let Scott talk a little bit about the architecture.
Thanks, Heather. Good evening, everybody. Scott McHale with Z Group. I'm gonna start with just walking through a little bit of the character and, you know, the history and what we're trying to pull from for inspiration imagery of how we want the building to look, be perceived, and, you know, what we can pull from. So within the history and research of, you know, what's in Basalt and what makes it and what made it, as Heather mentioned, the railroad, the history of the railroad was a big thing here. The Basalt Y, as we know, was one of the main intersections that went back to Aspen. So if we look back, the history of the railroad went from Denver to Grand Junction, and then it went from Grand Junction coming this way through Glenwood and then to Basalt and then up Root Eye over to Leadville. So the canyon wasn't, you know, a railroad back then, and this was one of the main stops, and then the main intersection went back to, and we can see that in this top picture, which is really neat to see, is this is the main railroad that's going up to Root Eye as it goes that way, and then this is actually the spur that goes to Aspen. So it's neat to see these buildings and the structures. In looking at the railroad, we really wanted to mix, you know, and pull from what architecture could we get from it. So we can see like some of the trestle bridges of the steel and the wood, the railroad pieces. You know, we have the red caboose and right here on the town lot. Again, more trestle bridges that are seen throughout Colorado. I don't know if that's Basalt or not. But again, just old historic mining towns with two-story structures that we could see that were on Main Street. We see downtown Basalt now. And so then we start mixing in, well, what is Basalt? And Basalt is a small little historic town. And in these small mountain towns that we see, similar like Telluride and Basalt and in many towns around, is we have a lot of two-story buildings, 2 to 3 story buildings in most mountain towns all over the U.S. So we really, that character, Victorian proportion windows, commercial down below, and then it could be commercial or residential up above. So we'll see that kind of threaded throughout different town histories. Again, this nice brick building out back. Materials used are wood and brick and glass and steel, so we'll see that kind of mixed in. And then these are just a couple little images of, Corner Market and Cafe, just the instead of a cold, big box store, it's a much more, casual and service-oriented to, people and gathering and to more of that small-town feel that we're trying to get. Next slide, please. So, slides are, I'll get into the character once we get into the 3D, sorry, but I'll jump into the plan now. So this is the first level plan, and we can see west versus Midland Avenue, and then on the south side, there's two rivers down here. So we saw the site plans, and then the bank to the north, and then the motel to the east. So this is the blow up of the grocery store area, the 9,000 square feet, loading dock to the north. We have main entry that we're looking at in the middle, and for security and for how most of the commercial grocers work, they would like to have kind of more of a one entrance with a security point. So this could be for the whole grocery store entry here. We're showing doors and windows and storefront along it because we want to be cognizant of the historic, Main Street USA feel. So that's what those are, but those doors will most likely not be used by the grocer, but that's kind of part of the design. Here's the corner that we like as kind of the hinge point. We think it's a very important corner as you come in. So rather than keeping it strong, we wanted to cut it in. This actually has a history in Colorado with those cut-in corners. There are quite a few examples in Aspen and in Denver where a lot of the buildings are recessed in to kind of let people, and it's more inviting. So that's where that comes from. And that's our main pedestrian entry now across from Two Rivers. As we go around the building from commercial, so again, commercial space, loading dock, trash tucked in as well. So we'll keep all those services where they are today. And then utility meters. We can see the overhead electric lines on this side. So those would be overhead. And then these dash lines, I think this is about 15 feet offset off of those. We'll come around to the south of the building, and this becomes our residential entry. We wanted to kind of keep it centralized, make it safe, and make it, a fun, inviting place. So this is where their main stair and elevator would be. So we have an entry door here, exit door from the stair, and then another entrance here. So this would be an exterior mail lobby, so mailboxes here, and then this is actually a more secure entrance, so they could have boxes, UPS deliveries dropped here. And this is an in and out, so this width handles cars going in and out, whereas the other is just an exit. So that's one to note. We didn't want to put a lot of traffic out that way, so this would be used more than this out would. Within it, we have 24 to 20-foot drive aisles as we go around. We can see ADA spaces up front, close to the elevator and entry. We'll have electric car charging stations kind of sprinkled throughout. We could see center island. So we worked through a lot of different, scenarios of how could this work. We tried to max it out. Came up with the 62 spaces inside, as we can see. So the parking kind of goes around the periphery. We can't, it's not easy to see, but the parking is on grade. There's a fence along the north side, and there'll be a fence along the east side, and then you'll see the little stair coming down as far as structure. Then the fence goes along here, becomes a little bit more of a wall just to hold that corner architecturally, and then it becomes more of that screen element that comes around here, and we'll see in the opening there. And then again, a screen element. That's part of the railroad heritage that we'll see in the renderings. And then as well, we have bike parking, scooter, motorcycles. We'll be working on all the final details of those. Next slide, please. Upper level plans, they're all similar. So second level, we can see here, so the second level, just like Main Street USA, so we are holding that second level with a zero setback on the west, so that'll hold that two-story Main Street feel. Those are studio apartments. Those are the ones that do not have decks on them, and that's where we have the common space on the level one to meet that requirement. Then across the north, we have, and then the blue is all studio units, the orange is one bedroom, and then the purple is two bedroom units. So we can see that mix as it goes down. And then a lot of the other units have the small little decks that meet the requirement. for that. We like the articulation, and we like, the fact is we live in the mountains, and it's a great place to be able to be on your deck, open the door and hang out. So, and it helps, break the facade, articulate things, and so it's not just a static facade. So those we really feel are good towards livability within the units. We can see that mix comes around, another exit stay over here, more studio units on that level 2. Again, this setback is at the 0, then on the south side, we have a couple feet on this setback, and then we step the building back. So rather than just saying that it's, the 4-story setback or whatever, we wanted to do the double load corridor. We didn't want to max out the whole site with as many units as we can, so we pulled it, consolidated it down the middle of the site, so that from the parking area, this is a very prominent corner as we drive into town, is we didn't want it to feel like this big giant building that's just sitting there. So by setting this back, this setback on the south side is about 34 feet from the property line back to here. So this is 34. So we go a couple feet to 34, and then a couple feet off this side. Then on, let's see, that continues up on 3rd and 4th level. So we, again, with those studios on the 2nd level, then above there, we stepped those back. So again, to honor that 2-story facade, we've pulled those back to 6'10" to 8'6", as this kind of goes. So this pushes back. Again, it pushes everything back, so the perceived, massing is broken down. We have lockers on each level. So those are small little lockers for the owners to have. And that's for affordable and for all the unit owners, or unit renters, sorry. Let's see, more of the same. These are all replicated. Setback on the east side is let's see, 2'7" on this corner, on this space. Yes, on the southeast corner here. And then we can see an angled line here is we have actually a sewer easement that we're imposing on this area. So that sets it back 10'6" off this side. So again, it's another self-imposed easement so that they can get back into there. So that kind of pushed the building. So we could see that with all these, with the electrical, with the sewer, it pushes us kind of into the center of the lot. So kind of naturally, this is how it falls together. Next slide, please. Section of the building. So again, with the master plan guidelines, we're proposing to use the 49 feet. We're trying to get as tall as what we can see down here is for livability, and for the grocer, we have a 14-foot floor-to-floor on the first level, and then second, third is 11 feet, and then up to the top would be 13 feet, 12'6", somewhere in there. So that's a section diagram. Makes for good livable units, which again, we want to help with that vitality. We want people to be here and these to be occupied. Next slide, please. Okay, so jumping back to character. So again, this is the main entry to the Midland. Again, bringing that architectural character in, melding Main Street USA with the railroad. What we'll start seeing is obviously the 2-story form. We're mixing in brick with lapped siding as well. We're breaking the modules down as discussed in the guidelines with 20 to 30 feet. So again, honoring those historic proportions. We can see the storefront with those entrances. Main entry is here under the Midland Grocery. We have a lot of sun that blasts us on the west. So again, the vegetation and the trees soften it. The canopies, are inviting, provide shade for inside. So those we feel are very important to the project. Those start pulling in some of the railroad heritage with some of the steel ties and some of that architectural forms. Again, the Main Street, brick, cornice, and then we can see the apartments in the back. Again, those are tying a little bit into, more of modern day architecture with a little bit of the railroad heritage that we're mixing in with the project. Loading dock is back in there. And there's that corner, so it gets cut out so we can see, it invites people to just kind of walk around the building safely. Next slide, please. Okay, pedestrian entry from Two Rivers. This again is that corner that we've eroded away. We can see our canopies, two-story, units are stepped back. So again, the perception, you'll feel the two-story, and that helps that. As we wrap the corner and go to the residential entry, this is where more of that railroad architecture kind of starts blending into what we have. So we like bringing some of that steel up into it. This is the stair tower and elevator tower. So rather than it just being a big blank wall facade, we feel that this architectural character will help, liven it up and bring some visual interest to the project. Again, helping to break down mass and scale, and make it a fun building. It feels really good. Again, covered entry over the residences, warm and inviting, great landscape out front to give it, shade, shadow, and, that's getting blasted by sun as well. So, again, all that helps us for livability. Next slide, please. Going on the southeast corner, over by the motel, we can see this starts having a screening element. So again, I was talking about that we have kind of it's a screened parking area. It's not technically a garage per se, so it's parking on grade. We can see we bring that railroad architectural character into it. So we have screen elements with some metal, so we can see partially through it, but we don't see all the cars that are parked inside. So this helps create this base, which is part of that one story that wraps around the building. So again, and then with the building stepped back, it's not an in-your-face building. So you can see those units step back there. This facade does come out to the edge. So those are the apartments. We have the decks that do help break up the facade as well as some overhangs on top for shade and relief as it goes around. And again, the materials are moving around the building as well to create, architectural character, some good aesthetics, and to break it up. This is that exit out of the building. And then this becomes a smaller fence that goes around the back. Again, just to screen the cars and parking. And there's that little pedestrian walkway back through there. Next slide, please. And on the back side, sorry, this one's a little cloudy day view. It's a little grayed out. But again, looking at from the Alpine Bank and Tempranillo parking area. So this would be the fence that's added to screen the cars. That's existing parking that's there now. There are some existing trees there. We don't have the power poles and power lines in, but those would be cutting across somewhere around, I think they're 20 feet or something like that off the ground, somewhere up there. And then again, this is all pushed back. This is actually pushed back about 39 to 40 feet from the property line. So this has a substantial setback, again, from the electrical lines and from the property. So we didn't want it to, come all the way to the edge. So again, that pulls it back. So it's good relief from there. And then we can see our building as it, jogs around on that side. Next slide, please. And that's it. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for letting us present. We're super excited about this. It's been a really fun project to work on, and we're looking forward to working with everybody on this more. So can we field some questions?
Questions from the committee?
And just a reminder, at this point, we're not getting into the merits of the proposal. Just a reminder that we're just asking questions, and we'll get into any merits of the proposal after we have our public hearing.
One question.
Go ahead.
Can somebody explain exactly what the zoning change needed is and why it's needed?
Sure, James?
Yeah, the current zoning is C2, and so they're proposing to rezone it to the Community Serving Commercial CSC Zone District. And the CSC Zone District was kind of set up as a tool during the Our-Town Master Plan process for the potential redevelopment, and so that it would be consistent with kind of the vision that was set up in the Our-Town Master Plan proceedings. And the differences are there are height differences between C2 and CSC. There's more height allowed in CSC. They both allow for mixed use concepts. So generally, the height and the pedestrian connections kind of come from the CSC zone district, and they're prescribed in there.
So the C2 zone district is what's used downtown. And so it has pretty strict limits in terms of height and stories. So the only place that you can do the 4 stories is really in the CSC for this particular piece of property.
And
And where 3 stories are allowed, even in the C2, it's pretty limited in terms of the uses and when you can go to 3 stories. So really, to go to the 49 feet, it was really part of a tool to get someone to build an anchor use. You know, it was like, we want these anchor uses, a grocery store is an anchor use, and we want density, and so that was kind of married. One, as a tool to get an anchor use, and 2, for the vitality piece.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Gino?
Yeah, I have several questions, and I promise not to have comments, because I'm really excited about the project, but some of the questions that I have is the wall that you indicated on the north and the south and the east wall on the exterior of the parking, is that all wood slats all the way around?
The screen wall.
It won't be wood because of the new wildfire code, but it'll be something warmer, so we're still working on materials. It'll be a non-combustible material to replicate a wood.
Okay, again, forgive me because I don't hear well, but, so there is a wall there, 6, 8 feet high, so,
Yeah, it's more of a screen fence, so it'll be gapped
Yeah.
boards.
okay, all the way around. And there is an exit on the east side, correct? For
Correct,
for
exit
cars.
only.
And it looks like it's a little crowded in there with that division that you've got with the number of parking. And also, does it interrupt your concept of that being a pedestrian walkway going from the east side of the building over to Midland?
Yeah, good question. We would do a crosswalk there and then signage in the parking garage that says, you know,
Okay.
sidewalk, caution, probably a stop sign. So the car has to come up, stop, you're looking both ways. And then we did do a turning radius out of that exit, and that's we changed it to an exit only, so we had nice, clear turning radius out into the main parking lot.
On the south side, it looks like you've got 2, 4, 6, 8 cars, tandem parking, is that accurate?
Yeah, that is correct. Scott did not point those out. To fully maximize what we can do in that parking structure, yep, we picked a small portion of those that would be tandem. Everything will be assigned, managed by the on-site management. And so we
Both-
felt like you could really
Both the
make use
north
of
and the
those.
south parking lots totally open without any trellis or anything, like, for example, snow removal, et cetera, on the north side will not be very pleasant, and the south side could be pretty hot.
Right. We've been talking about snow removal, and how that would,
Would just like.
you know, how much would blow in. It won't be as much as if you had an open parking lot, but they'll have to snow blow and shovel most of that parking structure.
The next is a strange question, and I don't know how to quite put it, but this is a very important parcel as far as I'm concerned. It's as much so as the Pan Fork. And it seems like you mentioned in your dialogue that it's very pedestrian friendly and you'll want to walk there. But what are you really walking to that you're not walking to now with the building that's there? What's the draw? You've got a good draw on the west side. I think you said something about coffee and things like that, which would be quite, but nothing is carried around on the south side, which is a better sun orientation, obviously. Has that been any kind of a thought? Because it almost seems like we've put our back to a very important river, the frying pan.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the entry and exit for the residences
Yeah,
is what now faces south, right? So I think the liveliness of 70 units, right, of fully occupied folks in and out, our spaces where we've kind of tried to create the one little pocket in the parking area, a couple of little, we didn't point it out, but outside the entrance to the residences, we've got a little bulb out. So I think there's a lot of engagement. It's not as much commercial engagement, which now faces Midland, but I think there's a lot of people walking out of there, walking now these sidewalks up onto Two Rivers, across to, you know, down Two Rivers Road, that kind of thing. So it's different than when Clark's, obviously that entrance faces that way, but I think you end up with a lot of that similar traffic, even though it's not for a commercial space.
I guess the reasoning behind some of the question is, I'm trying to look at, and this is not your problem, because I understand we're only talking about the building parameter, nothing to do with the site and the parking. But you mentioned that it is very friendly and nice for the people that live in there. But again, that's still a park that you're trying to have it coming from the Panfork properties all the way down to the river. And I didn't see, is there any way you could encourage something else to happen that would make the non-residents want to go into that property and enjoy whatever you want to enjoy, waiting for the rest of the project on Two Rivers Road to be developed, which will change again the dynamics. But something in the meantime, in the first 5 years.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And when you say that, you mean specifically the south-facing facade?
Well, it's just that it has an opportunity, instead of staying with the parking grid that you got, to make it such that it can be a little bit more landscaped, a little bit more pedestrian friendly, a little bit more opportunity to have mom and pop pop-ups in the summertime in particular for selling hot dogs, whatever it is, just as something more than it is still a parking lot.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think something we can talk about as a group. I think, again, the challenge has always been number of parking spaces and making sure that as we went to our neighbors who really have supported the project and kind of gave us that thumbs up through the HOA process, that they needed to feel comfortable that we were losing just the amount of spaces that we kind of needed to create some of that open space, the little park triangle in the middle, without going so far that it put their functionality at risk. And so it's been interesting to find that balance, and I think we felt like we did. I think you bring up great ideas that we can certainly noodle as a
And
team.
then two last questions is,
Sure.
do I understand that all the parking on the inside is for the residential?
That is correct.
70
Fully assigned to the,
70 spots.
yes.
And the last tiny question is, I don't quite understand what you said or didn't say about that, quote, open space, partially trellised, in the middle of the parking deck on the low side.
So, we were able to bump out a small common area essentially within the property, that will do probably a couple of tables, a little gathering area. And so that's right off the sidewalk and not part of this, so the screen wall will come
Why don't you
along.
show that drawing?
Yeah,
Is that you guys might be talking about two different areas?
We might be.
Sounds like Jim's pulling it up.
I'm trying to, just a quick second here.
So,
Right in the middle,
it's this guy.
yeah.
Yep, okay. So the screen wall essentially will, oh, that got really tiny. Make sure my
Sorry.
hand doesn't shake. So the screen wall will be here, right? And then it goes essentially behind this little common open space there. Do you know? So, it's this little relief zone for all the residents, again, you know,
Yeah, I was
just
just
step
wondering-
outside, and
I was
we
just
may
wondering
do
if
some
you-
artificial turf, we may do a couple of,
I was
like,
just wondering
seating
if you
areas.
really need those two parking spots, that you couldn't bring it out, so that.
Oh, yeah, like tie it out here?
Make something more than just a hole in the wall.
Yeah, sure, yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to just, make this more, seamless, is to look at that as a single cohesive space.
My last question then is really for Susan more than anything else, if I may. It's very hard to, as much as I love the project, what you've done, it's very hard to really get into approval process too quickly without knowing what is going to happen with the site. And I understand the 10 or 7 people you ever said that own it all. But I think it's a major part of this park that we're doing.
Well, I was thinking, Gina, while you're talking, and not to really put Tim and Andrew quite on the spot, but I think that they're not really looking for the commercial in the future to be built up along Two Rivers Road. And I was kind of interpreting something you said on the site visit, that you were envisioning that would happen in the future. But I don't think Tim, do you want to speak to that? What he's talking about is when the P&Z was talking about the CSC zone district, they really wanted the ability to have commercial up on Two Rivers Road. So go back to the site plan, James. So the P&Z was really anxious to get commercial up here against Two Rivers Road. And so I think there's 2 questions that maybe you guys could address. Can commercial building be built in the future there? And I think the other question that we've gotten is, does this preclude the ability to do a parking garage for downtown? So maybe if you guys could just answer those 2 questions.
There's a fair amount of conflicting geometry in this site to figure out where something like a parking garage would be located, situated. Anything's possible down the road with the right amount of support and the viability of that kind of a thing. I think we're talking about 2 different things. It's parking garage, and I think the geometry simply is hard in this entire site, and it would involve multiple owners to cooperate, to forego their property and allow it to be converted. And even so, we struggle to find where that would even be. As it relates to retail, facing retail on Two Rivers Road, I think that could be done. At this point in our generation right here, it would be such a hit to the visibility of the motel operator that we understood that was sacrosanct. They needed to have that visibility, and if that came, it would come later. For us also, the circulation around the west elevation of this building, that new patio that'll be in place is going to be a real gathering place for those pedestrian connections to link together. That's really going to be the epicenter of this project. That'll be the epicenter of this neighborhood, will be that west side that feels a little cluttered right now, and it's hard to even imagine, but that's where I think the heartbeat's going to be for downtown.
Thank you.
Bernie, questions?
Is this going to be condominiumized with sale of individual ownerships, or will the ownership be retained by the development group for rental?
Our plan is to rent them. There's a number of reasons. It's more attractive financing, and it's also, there's construction defects. Liabilities go on for 8 years, and so if you hold them for that long, you don't deal with those 2 very significant issues. And we frankly think there will be hotter beds and more easily absorbed as rentals.
Yeah,
That's it. Fine. Good. Michelle, questions?
I do. James, will you put the site plan back up? Sorry. The parking spaces closest to the gas station in front of the patio, do they meet engineering standards? Because it seems like they back into a intersection practically, or into the driveway. It just seems like a lot of conflict there between, I mean, as we all know, the property as it is right now is a ton of conflicts. Just backing out when no one's there is tricky. And so I'm just imagining myself trying to back out of that kind of into the driveway. it seems short if someone's waiting to come in to park, and I'm having to tell my kids to sit down while I'm trying to back up. Like, it looks tricky right there. So I just wondered if those, they must meet, but I just wondered about that. You answered my question about the rentals. And I guess the rest of my thoughts or comments, so I'll save them for next time.
Kyle, questions?
What are the size of the storage units you guys are looking at?
New size, right, that we're looking at? Yeah, they're 24 square feet, 3 by 8.
Maybe this is a question for staff, so maybe I shouldn't, you can tell me if it's not legitimate right now. Since the applicant doesn't own, they only own a certain percentage of the spaces, do we have any ability to control how they are designated for the 16 that they're asking for?
Well, it's an interesting question, because in the end, the approval can be conditioned on things that we're recommending, right? It's a little more complicated because the owners of the association in the end will need to agree to those rules. So it's not, normally it's like a two-way thing. We make conditions and the applicant says, I'm walking because I don't agree with them, or I can make that work, right? And here we kind of have a three-way, that one of those legs of that stool is multiple owners. So in the end, they could veto something, but we can certainly make recommendations, or we can give them direction. But it is kind of a three-way stool that has to fit. Is there, James, you want to clarify anything I'm saying there?
No, I think you said it well. I mean, as part of the license agreement discussion, there could be conditions and probably negotiation on those parking.
Yeah. I mean, we have some negotiating power, but we don't own the spaces, and
For the 16 spaces that you're referring to, Kyle, those are not on town of Basalt property, just to be clear. Those are away from those.
But they're not on your property either?
No, only as part of the HOA property.
and there's
Right.
2 feet of them that are on our.
In case you're asking about how the town's property, their land that's part of this discussion,
No,
those
it's-
16 are not within that area.
Right, no, it goes more into assigning parking that far away from someone's residence, and if we have any control or say in that. Because as this drawing is shown, they're putting the 16 at the bottom southeast corner in relation to where you're living. I don't know how I feel about that, and if we have nothing to say about that, then that is what it is, but.
And probably that's a good discussion item. Maybe we flag that as a discussion item, so that we can have more back and forth. But it's a good question.
Where those were situated was also as far away from the commercial, the motel, and as you get further to the east, we try to find those spaces that were going to be the quietest and not be competitive with, especially the motel's needs.
In relation to the motel of the one to the, which motel are you referring to?
Well, there's multiple buildings.
Right.
Heather, can you identify just with the cursor the 16 spaces that,
Oh, yeah, so they were here.
yeah.
But we went through with the motel and the HOA as an exercise of where those motel spaces, there's 40 some that would have been allocated to their ownership percentage. I think it was 40 some, wasn't it, Frank? And it also meshed with where they logically park, where those guests do park. And that's more to where the lower building is, and then toward the Flying Fish as you get out to that area. And then, of course, the grocery store is going to have its own commercial parking demands. And so we didn't want to put parking in an area, residential parking in an area where a grocery store shopper would be more likely to be parked.
And then the last criteria was, so this was literally most of the discussion with the HOA was, yes, we agree to designate, because that's the way the apartment building can then manage them. Okay, where? So then the last criteria was, in thinking about part of this island, this was the only place to then continue to do this pull-through, so to have truck and trailer. So then we kind of, it was like a process of elimination to then say, okay, where would those last spaces be? And I think, you know, from our perspective, to make sure that then you have these spaces where you have this really clear connection, safe pedestrian access, in the scheme of things, not that far away, essentially. If I can't park right at my door, I'm walking about probably 50 feet, you know, for some of these, and maybe 100 feet for the ones furthest away.
Does that help? It's just the background. I got
Yep.
there.
Is Soper's Engineering here tonight, or no? Is that a no?
But you could ask your question, and then for sure we'll have, if someone else can't answer it, that we can bring it back at the next meeting.
It's just, I guess, in relation to the traffic count. I guess the only difference is, it seemed like, was that the existing commercial has a much higher quantity than what a shopping center quantity is, which then drastically reduced the actual traffic generation. And I'm curious if that quantity number is just a given number, or if that is a formulaic number that was decided on by Soper's Engineering.
The allocation of parking to the commercial use of the grocery
No,
store?
I think what he's talking about, he's talking about the traffic study. So he's talking about the difference, kind of Soper's Engineering's conclusion that the net trips were going down because of the project. So maybe you could speak to that.
Trip generation is usually a standardized calculation that they use. And so grocery,
So if you want to go to page 74, just maybe I'm not clarifying myself, sorry. 74 in the packet, I don't know if that represents.
James, if you just bring it up.
I'm working on it. Here, just a quick second.
You're past it.
Right there.
It's right there.
Yeah, so if you look at the, I guess, third column over, quantity number, yeah, there's right there. So that is much higher than the shopping center, what you're saying is going to happen, which is just below that. And that's the only thing that looks to produce your lower traffic count, and I was wondering where those two numbers come from.
And that would probably be a good one for Stephanie to.
yeah, we
you know.
can clarify. I think that's the difference in the square footage.
I'll let Soper's
Yeah.
answer.
Okay.
I think we could answer it, but I think, yeah.
I'll let the professionals answer, but the theory is you've got an existing trip generation, it's an existing building that produces many things, including trips. So that's the offset.
So the 24 point, the trips are trips per thousand. So there was 24,000 square feet of commercial, so that's the 24.1. And then the 9.1 is the, dividing the square footage times 1,000. So that's the trip table. So if you go back to that table and multiply it out, you'll see the difference. That's the difference. It's trips per thousand, so they've divided the square footage by 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah, they're using the same average
See,
weekday
the
rate
trip-
here at 37.75.
Yeah.
So it's the square footage difference.
Okay. That's it for me.
Cool. Gino, another question?
Just one more almost idiot question. What are these two areas with arrows indicating? Is that something in the paving or?
It was the turning radius for fire trucks.
I knew there was something.
Great. I have a few random questions, so bear with me. How does 9,000 square feet as a grocery store compare to, say, Whole Foods? I know you can't compare it to City Market size-wise.
Whole Foods store is 27,500 feet.
So about a third.
About a third.
What is Roxy's? Sorry, just as a,
Roxy's and Aspen, we think it's about 5, Kyle. We might want to go get it, because
It's
that
like-
has been a lot of the bearing, points of, what's that compared to Roxy's?
And is it
But
a
it's
similar,
less than this 9,000.
is it a similar amount of space to the existing businesses on this side of the building?
No, it'll
Jimbo's
go
and-
deeper than that.
A little deeper than
Eric,
that?
Yeah, much deeper.
How many employees do you estimate in a grocery of that size?
Good point. We'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
There's an industry number for that, and we should be.
I'm
able
sure
to get
there
that
is.
one.
It'd be nice to know. In that vein, since you're trying to talk about, and maybe there's a comment more than a question, or I'll phrase it in a question. Would you offer housing to those employees, talk about livability and vitality, to be able to go downstairs to their workplace might be a nice offer.
Absolutely. At Basalt River Park, that's been extended to the merchants who would take space there, and it's relevant.
Great.
Yeah.
In that same vein, knowing that a couple of the businesses across the street are probably going to be impacted, would you try and include them in the grocery and some of the dining elements that you've talked about? Or BLT, for instance,
Oh, well, we're having conversations with some of them right now, and other merchants even in the downtown core. So, yeah, that's coming together. I think first it's to establish what it will be,
Sure.
and that this is real. It's a little tough to get deep into those kinds of conversations when we're not there yet.
I know we're not there. I'm just throwing it out there, getting
It's
ahead of the game.
especially relevant to how we've had discussions for years, quite frankly, with all of the grocers, Roxy's and all of them, believe me, and then some.
Yeah.
But if you don't have something that's real to them, the conversations don't go too far.
Yeah.
So.
Fair enough. Just
Yeah.
something to jump out at me. A couple little things on the business side of it, grocery side. You mentioned in the packet, at least, that you're gonna have composting available. Are you working with someone to make sure you have it properly spaced and sized and whatever that looks like? And is that both residential and commercial, or just one or the other?
Well, certainly that would include residential, that's a mandate. Now, in the commercial, we would work with the grocery operation. I think there's even a couple examples in grocery stores where they've got zero waste.
Yeah.
So, but again, we're not that far along.
I know. I'm
But the concept would certainly fit with where we're going with the concept of the grocery and market.
Great. In that vein, it didn't look like it, at least in the initial imagery, would the loading dock be covered, obviously from here you can see what's there. It's right next to this vitality center that you're proposing. So is it gonna be sheltered and?
It'll need to be,
Yeah.
and yet there's conflicts galore back there.
Okay.
With property boundaries and overhead, or all utilities that merge into that spot. But it needs to be functional.
Sure.
So it needs to be covered, but it can be fairly open. Thinking of Whole Foods, it's one that we all can kind of see.
Yeah.
And it's not terribly unpleasant, it's a little ways from the highway, but you can do it in architecturally kind of an interesting way, and it functions, but it's gotta be protected from the elements.
More have it on your radar at this point than anything
Yeah,
else.
Yeah.
And we're not reinventing the wheel. We'll find good examples and figure it out.
Of course. No, I figured. Maybe a question for you, maybe for staff. And I understand that Bach agrees with this, the 15 units and 15% going on the lower limit and then charging the RET to the 1.5%. Is the tax monies gathered equivalent to 7 additional units that we might be afforded to have?
don't probably have that answer for you.
Yeah.
We can look.
Look
at
into it.
Yeah.
Again, apples to apples, doesn't have to be exact by any means, but knowing that we're gonna be able to utilize that in a good manner.
Eric, I wanted to make sure, we're not asking for an offset for credit for the existing buildings that already employ. So I just want to, we're happy to provide the,
No, I appreciate that, and I like what you're doing, I like the proposal, I just wanna
Yeah.
see, cause what the law allows us to kinda look at with that. Last question, more for clarification, and maybe you're looking at it down the road. You mentioned the residential being all electric, why not the grocery as well? Is it
That's a
simple
tough one.
economics, or?
When we did Whole Foods, we joked around that building basically became Swiss cheese with all the mechanical systems, the utilities, the HVAC that you have to put in to make it, coolers, freezers, ovens, fryers, everything that goes into that mechanically. Whole Foods is, a reputable company, and they laughed when we even talked about LEED certification. There's just no way.
Yeah.
So they need to have gas to be functional. So I think that's a reality, unfortunately. But if we can keep from doing those natural gas lines up into the residential, I think we've done, big improvement.
Oh, absolutely. Just
And put
Qu-
solar
Yep.
as well on the rooftop.
awesome. Any last minute questions?
I have a couple. I want to make sure I have my numbers correct. Did you say that there will be 62 parking spaces in that screened-in area? And then there will be an additional 16 outside, correct? Okay. So it'll be a total of 78
For residential.
for residential, yeah. Yeah, okay. And then who do you see, who have you been envisioning as renters as you've been planning this project, and what kind of price range do you see for the units, for the free market ones, not the
well,
affordable?
I think we've had an interesting mix. I mean, we've had people that work up valley and like to ride. I'm talking about our project in Willits, for example, which is also somewhat near the transit, which is very important to us to be near transit, and is important to our tenants to be near transit. So I think we're finding anything from young couples to older people. Some people just want a very clean, brand-new, comfortable, elevator-served place to walk and live. And we're seeing a few young people as well, but it's really more, people that would want a small unit. And I think that we're actually seeing people that are working here, that this is the sort of the cheapest, comfortable, clean place to live, and that's what we're trying to offer. So by being small, you can make them, obviously less expensive than having a house. So what would our price range be? I think we can get back to you with that information. When there's market, I can pull what the asking rents are on the apartments that are in the market. That's easy. It's on the websites, so it's easy to find.
What's the website?
You can go on 110 Harris is an apartment building in Willits, or.
Oh, you're talking about for
Lumen
comparables?
There's
it'll be on
apartments that I don't have the exact number on the top of my head, but they're easy to find.
It'll be in that range, Cindy.
Since Cindy brought it up, I heard a rental, I think, from one of the development team, could expect $1,500 to $1,800 a month on a small one-bedroom rental based on prices now in Basalt. Is that in the range?
It is.
Probably.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Is the 15% affordable, is that a conditional that they're asking for, or is that already within their rights? Because you mentioned it's at the lower end.
It's a code provision, whether it's a by right or, reviewable. We can talk through that as staff and probably give you feedback.
Could you speak up, James? Can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Whether the 15% with the 1.5% RETA is a by right or, a flexible for review, staff can look at that and give P&Z feedback at the next meeting on that.
So you're saying what's not clear?
Well, we're just talking about the Rita burning, and his question was, does the town have any discretion on that? Is it automatic, or is there a discretion? And
On the amount of the Rita or a Rita at all?
well, do you get the reduction? The code says that you can reduce it from 25 to 15% if you have the 1.5. Is that anything that the town has any discretion on, or is it automatic? And we'll come back at the next meeting.
So that is the applicant's discretion.
We don't have an answer to that. We're gonna bring that back, Bernie,
Seems
at the
very
next meeting.
crucial to this whole consideration.
So we're gonna bring that back at the next meeting.
I have to note, the discussion on the affordable housing was 1/3 of one paragraph for a project this big. I don't feel well informed about it, and I will ask questions when comments come. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Great.
So you ready for the
Yep.
public hearing?
So, with no more questions, we are gonna open this for public comments at 7:36. If you have any comments, please come up, state your name, and are we limiting it to 2 minutes, or just?
You know, I think we just want people to be reasonable with their time, if that works for everyone. And then you can tell people if they're too long to wrap it up.
Will do.
And before you do that, I do have a couple announcements to make.
By all means.
All right, so, we're allowing the public to participate in one of two ways. You can get up at the, podium here if you're in the meeting room, but we're also allowing a Zoom option. So the second page in online, the easiest way to join by Zoom, the second page of the agenda that is online has a Zoom link, and the easiest way is to hit that link, and you'll be brought into a waiting room, and James will let you in at the appropriate time, will allow you to speak. If you can't access the Zoom link, you can call 1-346-248-7799, and that number is up on your screen if you're watching on Grassroots. And the webinar ID is 958-6453-0105. And if you're having problems, you can also then text me at 970-379-1514. And so we're now ready to take a public comment.
We do have somebody in the waiting room, and I can promote them if you'd like to see if they want to talk. Hi, Raquel, on the Zoom meeting, do you have comments for the town P&Z?
And just so you know, you're muted.
I actually do,
Okay.
and I just, I was wondering why we were included in that plan.
Can you?
Because I do see Jimbo's Liquor, and I do see you guys are building apartment complex up above. I mean, I just I understand the concept of it, but I feel like we're the locals restaurant favorite. So I just wanted to see if we are fitted in somehow.
Is she from BLT?
Yes.
Yeah, she's BLT. Okay.
Could you,
Raquel, can you clarify restate your full name and that you live in Basalt?
Yes, we are with the BLT.
Okay. Thank you for that. I don't know if you have anything to add. It's kind of hard to
this
address.
isn't a, we have your comments, and I think the P&Z's noted them, and potentially the applicant can address that when they're making responses. But what we don't do in our normal public hearing is kind of have a debate back and forth. We just have the public make comments and public comments, and then the P&Z considers that. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Raquel.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else, James?
That's all that's on the Zoom.
Is there any, you can maybe ask if anybody in the audience wants to speak.
Anybody in the audience? If not, do you have any texts, Susan?
I don't have any text. Maybe we can just make an announcement that if you're listening and you want to make comments, we will be continuing the public hearing, and you can make comments at that time.
And the continuance will be till July 6th, which is next Tuesday.
Yeah.
July
think that's
6th, they're continuing?
Correct.
And that's,
Well, we'll vote on that.
that's when we'll have comments?
Well, no, you're
Well-
gonna have comments tonight. You can have comments tonight. Okay.
If no one else is here to speak, we'll close the public hearing at 7:41, and we will now open it up for commissioner comments.
And just a reminder, these are commissioner comments. And then also, if there's additional information that you would like us to bring to the next meeting, so we can be prepared for a good discussion.
So we started there, we'll start over here with Kyle tonight. Any comments at this point?
Big fan of the project. I really like the architecture. It seems very fitting, I think, for downtown. My only thing, I guess, is the size of storage units. You're creating very efficient spaces, but we all own a lot of things here, and how that is incorporated into the development. We obviously do not have a storage unit minimum within the code, but something to consider. I think the 3x8 may be a bit small for what people may own. And then how is the current design incorporated ceiling heights with 49 feet? Are you looking at a 12-foot height on the first floor, or has that been thought about yet?
It's 14.
Yeah, it had,
Yeah,
It's
14.
yeah, 14 feet floor to floor, first level, 11 feet second, 11 feet third, and then there's about 12/6 to 13 left over.
okay. That's it.
Michelle?
Okay, James, I'm sorry, will you pull the site plan up?
Sure.
One of my main comments, I really like the idea about the front of the grocery store turning into the Paradise Bakery corner. However, one of the biggest differences of what this site plan is showing and what happens at Paradise Bakery corner is in front of Paradise, there's no parking. It's a clear view, it's clear access there. And I would say the comparison in Basalt would be Butch's Lobster Shack when it's open. And it's just, there's no parking because it's driveway. So I would just challenge you to figure out how to move a couple, at least, of those parking spaces that are right in front of the grocery store and in front of that pad. Because when I see those elevations, all I see are the cars. I just see all the red lights, the parking spaces there. So I would encourage that. Secondly, I don't know how this works out with the geometry of everything, but I'm really perplexed with the driveway in. The pedestrian path, or the crosswalk that you're proposing in front of the gas station over, I'm wondering what it would look like if it was moved south, and it was a little more directed straight into the wider section of the outdoor area of the patio. This goes along with my little mindset of moving a couple of those parking spaces somewhere else. I don't know where you're gonna put them, but I just think having that visual move, because otherwise people are gonna end up walking in between the cars that are there to get there. If I'm over across the street at the park and I'm coming over to this property, then I have to cross another driveway, and I have to cross another driveway to get over to this amenity. There seems like there could be a little more efficiency in walking over there. And along those lines, I don't know what the feasibility of this is. I'm sure it's nil. but the pedestrian path that connects the corner of the grocery store to Two Rivers Road, maybe it could be combined into some sort of raised crosswalk to turn it into a grade that could be a ramp instead of stairs. Because right now, there's only one ADA accessible path, and if this is truly gonna be more pedestrian oriented, it needs to be more accessible in general, and if there's any way to figure out how to do that, that would be, I think, ideal. The stairs down by the lodge are gonna be the stairs down by the lodge, that's just the way that's gonna be. I really liked Gino's idea of the interior open space there being either bumped out or put somewhere else, and maybe putting parking in there. I appreciate the idea of having a covered outdoor space for the residents.
So it's not covered.
Oh, it's not covered.
The building's pushed back behind that, so it's actually an open.
Oh,
So
yeah.
It's not, it's hard to tell on this elevation, but
Thank you for clarifying that, because I
yeah, it looks like it's covered, but
yeah, so I feel like that's even stronger then. I think that's a pretty useless, I think it would be better used as parking and have more park space or the pedestrian amenity outside. I'm sure that's tricky with the parking licensing and all of that jazz, but I think that would add a lot. I'm happy that these are gonna be rentals, actually, and I'm anxious that there's no vacation rentals in the free market units, for whatever that's worth. Oh, last one. I just think it would be interesting to figure out how to embrace Basalt as a bicycle destination. And where you're gonna park the bikes on here. I know you said earlier that you're developing that plan more and where that's gonna go. But this is a biking destination as well. And as far as being pedestrian oriented too, I ride downtown with my kids all the time. I don't see, this brings me back to having to cross 2 driveways to get to that grocery store. I don't wanna have to do that. I've already crossed too many streets and been terrified on my way here. And so, just figuring out how are the pathways wide enough, where the bikes meet, maybe that triangle is a bike parking, or I don't know. Maybe there's something there to that. Otherwise, all the bikes are gonna be parked on your nice patio, and there's not gonna be a space to perform or do all the stuff. Looks like about 2 bike trailers would fit there and a couple of dogs, so just kind of figuring that out a little bit would be great. Otherwise, I'm excited about it. I'm a little, I'll support Bach's recommendation on the studios. It's not my personal preference, but I'll respect that that's their recommendation.
Cool. Bernie? Work our way back.
I was on the council and I supported and helped pass the special zoning to densify downtown. I support that. I think there are many good things about this project that meets our needs to densify and have a diversity of community in town. I feel very comfortable with the development team because they have a proven track record locally in Willits, and to me, more importantly, on the Pan and Fork, where they brought us a community unifying development plan and project of a proper scale for the city and the river park. It does not separate the town by 4 stories of condominiums. It's diverse, it's interesting, it includes diversity of community. It includes the key that I always thought was the key and the community did, the restaurant in the park. So I have no problem with the development team. I do have significant issues with 2 items that this to me is a first cut. This is a first time at bat, and it brings up a lot of interesting possibilities, but I will just mainly focus on two areas will I feel that I could not support it as it's presented in its initial iteration to us. The first and most important is the affordable housing. I find the staff analysis very deficient compared to what I've seen staff produce in the past. Here is one of the critical issues in the master plan and the master plan process, and it's given one paragraph on one page, and staff has not researched the hurdle question. Is it up to the developer or the town to decide whether the 25% applies, or can the developer choose to go with a RETA and a 40%, a drastic reduction in the affordable housing stock in downtown? I need a reanalysis, a thorough reanalysis. I don't know how many units exactly we're talking about. Usually we get it broken down by unit when we're looking at affordable housing. It's not here. So that's what, next iteration, I need a substantial improvement in the analysis and depth by staff in their staff memo on a project this significant for us to consider in our downtown. I personally cannot accept the Bach recommendation because I find it is not supported by the master plan, and in fact, it contradicts the master plan. I find no discussion by Bach reported here of how the affordable housing works with the master plan, and the projects that were rank ordered by the community in one of the best and most extensive community involvement plans, which the then council and the then P&Z, which I was on, we all agreed that was probably the best master plan in the history of the town, most thorough, most involving, most complete. And Bach cannot even mention that when they come up with their finding that they accept a 40% reduction in affordable housing. I find that invalidates their conclusion. Instead, they choose to focus on relatively minor issues such as studios, style type of apartment, and livability standards. What should be the glaring neon sign is how much are we going to add to our affordable housing stock downtown, and they do not address it, so I do not consider their recommendation valid. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the staff memo said that the BCC ranked as among the top, in the top 13 list of projects that the community wanted to achieve. And that is correct. Here's the list of the 13 based on interviews, extensive interviews, open houses, online survey, a survey of office holders, business owners. But that really did not convey accurately and properly where the Clark's development parcel fit in what the community wants. Number one was build significant affordable housing. 2, connector shuttle downtown to Willits. 3, capital investments to reduce greenhouse emissions. 4, significant solar project. 5, fire-wise mitigation project. 6, additional pedestrian bridge over the Roaring Fork to the library. 7, implement significant Midland Avenue improvements, construct South Side Midland Avenue underpass, provide free raft-to-bus service, and support other public-private partnerships. Number 11 was develop Clark's Market parcel, and I would ask that the staff report properly put the ranking of Clark Market in context with the actual report itself so that it is not accidentally misleading. Of all 13 projects, council has only chosen to act on one, and that is the swimming pool upgrade. But I think I could not approve a project that denies this months and years-long process that I was part of and proud to be part of. And I find that if we approve this without considering the public sentiment for building significant affordable housing, we really will have badly damaged the public trust. And I cannot do that. I don't know how you others feel. In fact, I think Heather said it quite well, that a key development of a residential project downtown requires a good diversity of income levels, cultures, and ages. To me, that's the definition of sustainability. But when you ask to cut the affordable housing by 40%, that is going in the wrong direction of achieving the stated goals of the development team. Next, I want to talk about the grocery store. The grocery store is near and dear to almost all people who live in the east part of the city and downtown. Everybody, including myself, wants to see residential densification. But what really hits our hearts is a 7-day-a-week, 12-hour-a-day grocery store that is not selling candy, cake, snacks, liquor, but is a real grocery store. And again, the staff analysis was just so uninformative. And here, that would be the second thing I would not be able to compromise on. And we are used to getting expert reports by people who are knowledgeable in these fields, and I certainly know that our staff, as capable as they are, have no training or expertise in grocery store economics in small towns. I have not heard from the development team that they hired and engaged such an expert and went through a process and gave us a report with facts, statistics to back up the viability of this grocery store. I consider throwing a bunch of conditions down on paper an exercise in ignorance and futility. How are you going to enforce these things? It's the market that tells the grocer he's got to make a profit, he's got a square footage, he's got a rent to pay. That is what we should have to look at. Is this even a feasible, reasonable expectation? I'm willing to consider it, but I need the information, and I need an expert report, and I need facts and figures to be able to come to a decision on any stipulations we would put on the developer. So I just want you to know, I support the project. I want it to work. I would like to get to yes, but to me, I cannot see how reducing the affordable housing component to less than 20% would be at all congruent with the extensive and intensive master plan process that we engaged in. And I would hope we could negotiate on the grocery store something that is truly market-driven viable, not based on a dictate we put down on paper and hope it flies, because that just don't work in real life. As far as most of the other things, I have no real comment on. I wish the design were more imaginative. I saw the modern structure. I'm not sure that was a very good example to show people. We have an incredible library that some people would say is too modern, bears no relationship, and yet its function is brilliant. Its setting, how it complements its setting and how it looks into the future is brilliant. I would just ask them, not a requirement, to reconsider their design to be more future-looking, more open, more inviting. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to hit on. I think that's basically it, and so I think this was worth our while. This is a good first swing at bat. We've got a lot to work with, but I think it needs very considerable fleshing out before it comes back to us a second time, both by the applicants and by our staff.
Thank you, Bernie.
Can I
Gino?
ask can I ask Bernie a question, or do we wait until?
We'll let everybody comment.
Okay.
then we can-
I had one question, and that is, how does the RETA work on apartment rentals?
Bernie, that's been asked, and staff is going to research that.
That's another thing we don't know. Okay, you asked. Very good. Thank you. I'm done.
I think it's a very good project, and I commend you for the work that's put into it. And I think sometimes beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, but I think it's a good project, and it has the right mix of design, materials, scale for what we're trying to do within it. As I said, I'm concerned about the site part of it, but that's not part of tonight's discussion. So I would encourage you to continue and refine. I have a few minor problems with the elevations, particularly to how they appear to the public. Yes, it's it's a much better statement coming in off the four corner, or what might be a roundabout, where Midland and Two Rivers come. But along the side, it's still just a little bit hairy that I'm, just maybe some of it is color, but for the most part, I think you're on the right track, and I would encourage to keep going on it. I do have basic questions that you really need to look at. Most of this, especially with a huge number of studios that are there, it's obviously that we're going to have a lot of young people in here. And if there's 74, 75 units, there's going to be at least 80 bikes. And I don't know where the bikes are going to go. I don't know if the bikes can fit in the elevator, by the way. In fact, the elevator just looks a little bit small, and I'm concerned how you get furniture in and out. And is the elevator open to the public, that the public can just come in and push a button and go up and down? I don't know, because the security door is on the opposite side of it. But I would encourage you to continue the design. I have a good feeling for what my colleague has said about the affordable housing, and we are a part of it. My other comment is we also have a job at just not to use names like, it's easy name to say affordable housing unit, which means cheaper. But we have a whole raft of studios in there that are going to be attractive to young professionals, young anybody that has $1 or $2 more that would like to live downtown and be a part of Basalt. That's also part of our goal for Basalt. We need to get professionals, we need to get thinking not just affordable housing versus market rate, but housing that young people can come into, teachers, new time people out of school, nursing, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that this project really does that well. To me, it's just a number 25. Okay, pick one, 20, 19, 18. And if we're just going on what we all thought of was a reasonable approach to 25%, I totally understand that, and I don't have any disagreement. But since there is the latitude, if you would, that this project is more than just a number, more than just an equation, but what it's doing of bringing new people, young people into this town. We need those. Us old farts are dying out little by little, so it's good that we see these new people. And I really encourage it. I really encourage it. So I would be one that will be very favorably to vote yes on this project right down the line. But it does need a little bit of help. It could use some more trellises to hide some of that parking. Needs a few more aspects on the north side, particularly where you're going to get a bunch of snow in there. But those are things I'm sure you're going to be thinking out. And I would echo what my colleague said. I think, Tim, you've got a proven track record, and I'm 100% behind you. So I am not at all concerned, and I know that the staff has done a good job, and I back them 100%.
Cindy?
I think it's exciting to see that there is finally a proposal for this property that we've all been thinking and dreaming about what could be there for at least 10 years or so. That said, I do have some concerns about the project as it's now presented. One is I'm concerned about the number of parking spaces being enough for all the use that would take place there and the residential. I think if you've driven around Basalt lately looking for a place to park, it's a challenge. And I don't see, as much as we would like to wish and think that everyone's going to be biking and using public transit, the reality is, you know, a couple that's in a one-bedroom is going to have 2 cars. Same with a family that might be in a 2-bedroom. So I don't know what avenues there would be to increase parking, or if there's a way to reconfigure what would go in that parking area, but for me, that would be that is a serious reservation on it. I too would like to see more affordable housing in the project. I think it's the perfect location for it. And to me, the problem with getting money in kind instead of the actual housing is then, where do you find the places to put the housing? With a project like this that's getting built, I think it would be a kind of a wasted opportunity to not maximize what we could put in there. The one thing I really would like to comment on, though, is the grocery store. We have a grocery store in downtown Basalt. We have Skip's Market. If you really need to just run out and get milk or butter or something, there's the Basalt store and 7-Eleven, and then of course we have 2 large grocery stores a couple miles down the road. I question whether that's really the highest and best use that we can make of that space. I feel like in all the discussion around the Riverfront Park, there were a lot of ideas that were out of the box and people expressing a desire for something really different here. And I don't feel like we achieved that with the River Park. And I feel like this is our last chance to do something that might be just a little bit out of the box for Basalt. In that space, what's going on there to me seems really like a semi-urban, if not an urban development. Look at all the things that Denver is doing in terms of multi-use spaces, food halls, places that combine a mix of food stalls and some small, pop-up market type areas. If we could have something like that, I think it would generate so much more excitement than a grocery store. We're also trying to get more visitors. We are getting more visitors here, and that's a trend that for the foreseeable future is going to continue. If I'm a visitor to a town and I drive by something and I see a grocery store, unless I have to go in there for something, I'll drive on by. If I drive by and I see, this is the Midland Food Hall and Emporium or something, that sounds kind of cool. Like, I might go and stop in there. And hearing you talk about how you want to really activate this space and engage the community, I would really urge you, and I'm happy to send examples of things, but just to urge you to look at what else could be in that space that could still provide a community need and have some excitement. Maybe there's even a little, space to have music on certain nights. Or, I also think if we do want young people to move into this building, that's the kind of thing people are looking for these days. I just want to make sure I covered everything. Yeah, I think so. I mean, really in addition to the parking and the affordable housing, I would challenge you to consider something other than a plain grocery store. Thanks.
You're welcome. As this is the kind of our first crack at it, it's just a sketch plan. I kind of agree with Gino. We're going to get improvements. So I think, I see you taking notes. I think all the comments that are being made are valid and reasonable. I think there's some questions to answer as far as the validity of this flexibility within the affordable housing requirements. Bernie, if you do the math, it's 7 units. It's 11 units at 15%. It's 18 units at 25%. So is that worth doing it versus the money that might come from this to put into somewhere else? I don't know. Cindy, I love your ideas about the vitality. You don't have an anchor, it sounds like. So take the ideas and run with it, as far as I'm concerned. Work with the local vendors, if you can, if at all possible. They're here, they're invested, they know what's going on. We lost a great taqueria here. We have the possibility of losing that again. That shouldn't stop a project, but at the same time, it's a part of our community. But it could be a great solution somewhere in there. I don't know what it is, but possibly. As far as I'm concerned, it's a really good start. But there are things to improve, and I'm looking forward to seeing that as we move forward. If we're done with comments,
I just have one, and I'll tag team on to that is, which you guys probably have already thought about, but the central market in the Rhino District. I mean, that would be amazing. Something along those lines. Oh my gosh.
Tagging on to that, though, I think we have to be careful of how much we drive their business decisions, because they are not allowed to do a restaurant per the code we set up. So as much as what we want to see, I think, again, in regards to zoning, they are pretty set in stone of what they can do. And I think we have to be careful of the grocery store is what opens them up to height limits and a few other things that they then get to take advantage of. So what happens if that goes dark? Then they've got a larger building, and that's more of our controlling piece there. I think we just got to be careful.
great point. I don't want to cut it short. Just this is sketch. So we've been here for over 2 hours. I don't think we need to beat it up among the committee today. That's their job. I think they know the regulations and the rules that they can come back and what that anchor space could look like. I agree with that. So that being said, do we want to take a motion to continue this hearing until July 6th? Gino first,
I'd make a motion.
Bernie a second. All in favor? Do we need to take a roll call or just?
Boy, you know what? I don't think we need to if we can see everyone, but I'm just gonna be careful and do it.
Okay.
And then I think we might wanna just make a couple comments after that.
Okay.
So, Bill Marin is absent, Kyle Oberketter,
Here.
Gino Rossetti, this,
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Continue.
Eric Bolzek,
Yes.
Michelle Tebow,
Yes.
Bernie Grauer. Yes. Rob Levitt is absent, and Cindy Hirschfeld.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and continue it. I'm not 100% sure that we'll be ready for a final action. That was our original plan, is to come back to you and have.
So can revisit next week and decide.
Yeah, so we'll figure out between here and now. And keep in mind, this is a 2-step review, this isn't a 3-step review. So there'll be a sketch plan review that the council will approve by resolution, and then there'll be a final plan review, just like we did on the River Park, for those of you who are involved. James, is there anything else you want to say?
No, I think that's a good wrap up, and we'll see about whether next week works or if we have to go into the future.
Should we just move it to the 20th?
No, I think it's good to go to the 6th, and we'll evaluate what we could do. Because we might break things up. There's a couple different ways we can play it. But we're a little challenged because of the 20th. We have a lot of people out on the 20th. And we also have a significant, an introductory meeting also, but we have another meaty,
So the continuation will be on the 6th of July.
Yeah, we're gonna do the 6th of July, and then on the 6th, we'll see what we're gonna do. We'll let you know.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Well
guys.
done.
Give a minute.
Do you wanna take a break?
Let's go, let's get it done.
Let's get it done? Okay. The next item on the agenda, item 3A, is,
Let's clear the room, though. Let's do that, and then we'll. Keep in mind, we're still filming, so just guys, be careful there. We're still filming. We're not taking a break with the filming, so we're just trying to clear the room.
Thank you so much.
Kyle, can you grab me a water?
Yep, no, you. Not yet.
All right, so item 3A is Eagle County referral comments on the Fields application. There is a preliminary letter in our packet on page 105, I believe, 104. James, Susan, do you want to?
Sure, this is James again.
Yeah, I'm just sharing a screen, just a second here, okay. Yeah, this item is an Eagle County referral, and it's an application for 135 residential units that is proposed on the Fields development parcel. You can see it here on the screen. It is just, oh, what's going on? Just a second. Sorry.
Is there enough? Thank you.
I don't know where that's coming from.
My
There we
packet
go.
is.
It's just to the,
Not in, want to drink it in here, take it home.
sorry. It's just to the west of the Summit Vista subdivision and just to the north of Crown Mountain Park. You can see Crown Mountain on the vicinity map here. Here's Crown Mountain. Here's the Field subdivision. Here's Highway 82. And you may remember the Fields application was in front of Eagle County several years back as well. They got a sketch plan approval. That sketch plan approval went away and was not extended any further. So this is a new sketch plan application for 135 residential units. And, you know, basically, staff has provided draft comments for consideration, and the draft comments are pretty similar to the comments that we had from the P&Z several years back. Let me see if I can go down. The first comment talks about the master plan, the town's master plan, and the fact that the subject property is considerably outside the town's urban growth boundary. You can see on this map from the master plan, this is the West Basalt future land use map. Here is the subject property, and the town's urban growth boundary is the red line here, and then the Eljabel urban growth boundary that's in the master plan that was added in 2020 is the orange line right here. So all of this area is outside the urban growth boundary. And the first comment in the draft letter gives some history about the 2007 and the 2020 master plans and the fact that it's outside the urban growth boundary, and the town didn't believe that this was the appropriate location for density. Comment number 2 gives some more history about the Regional Planning Commission's review of the Mid-Valley Area Community Plan. In the 2012, the town encouraged the Regional Planning Commission not to change the land uses for the property to make it a more significant urban suburban level residential. And once again, in 2018, the town suggested that they not change the future land use map to a more significant density, and both times the Regional Planning Commission went ahead and changed the designation in the Mid-Valley Community Plan. And then, you know, consistent with the
Sorry,
town's...
James, could you say that last sentence one more time?
Yeah, in 2012 and 2018, when Eagle County was doing updates to the Mid-Valley Area Community Plan, the town encouraged them not to change the future land use designations to add more density potential because it was outside the urban growth boundary of the town. But the Regional Planning Commission did so anyway in both cases. And then comment number 3 we have in the draft letter says that P&Z does not believe this is an appropriate place for 135 additional dwelling units, in that it's outside the urban growth boundary, and this type of development belongs in the town's urban growth boundary. Comment number 4 that we have in the draft letter for P&Z to consider provides an example that Shadow Rock Townhomes made an argument that significant density made their units cheaper and more affordable. And we've got a comparison in there that currently the prices are $800,000 to $1.3 million. And so we don't think that having non-deed restricted units is a way to get to affordable prices. Comment number 5 in the draft letter talks about traffic generation. The intersection at Elgibel Road and Highway 82 does not perform well, and basically in the past, CDOT has indicated that there couldn't be any additional development done off of that intersection without fixing the intersection. And one example was that City Market had proposed a fueling station several years back, and CDOT basically said that they would have to fix the intersection, which was a multi-million-dollar project to fix the intersection. And so as part of their proposal, they're proposing not to fix the intersection and instead suggest that, when Eagle County gets funding for the fix, that's when the intersection would get fixed, not with this development. And so the comment that we have in number 5 says that's really not fair. City Market would have had to fix the intersection to go ahead with their development, as well as some of the other projects that have come through off of that intersection. And then comment number 6 that we have in the draft letter indicates that the town P&Z does not believe that this is really a transit-oriented development, in that the closest transit stop is Elgibel, over by the Elgibel Park and Ride, and that there's not a good pedestrian connection to get from the location of this property to the Elgibel Park and Ride and bus stops. They're not proposing to provide a pedestrian path along Valley Road here because it's too narrow of right-of-way. Instead, they propose to provide a connection into Crown Mountain, which is kind of a circuitous way to get to Elgibel, so this points that out. And then comment number 7 indicates that if Eagle County is inclined to approve the application, that the town recommends not permitting multifamily buildings of 3 stories on the site, in that the surrounding residential development is primarily single-family in nature and 2 stories. And then finally, the draft comment number 8 in the letter provides concern about the ability of Mid-Valley to absorb the services needed for this development, including school and daycare services, and would suggest that if they're inclined to approve the application, that they would provide a contribution from the applicant to mitigate those impacts. So generally, there's similar comments to what the town has provided in the past on the Fields applications, with the exception of the new kind of caveat here about them not proposing to fix the intersection, and that was added.
Thanks, James. Seeing at the time, I'm gonna do something different. Instead of each of us going individually, I'm just gonna put it out to the group, see if this goes a little faster. Any questions for staff to clarify or to help with?
Eagle County has responsibility for fixing the intersection, not the applicant?
That's the way they've put it in the proposal, and it seems like Eagle County, at least from the engineer's comments in the application, are at least willing to consider that.
I can't wrap my brain, does anybody else have that doesn't make sense.
And I think, the background is they are proposing they're working on trying to come up with funding partners to fix the intersection. Eagle County is at the moment.
Just keep in mind, this is a pretty important intersection for us because it serves City Market, which is our biggest sales tax generating area. So historically, we've opposed this traffic circle idea that they were originally gonna have, where they're gonna have this traffic circle further down Valley, about where the other circle is if you were going to
Who's they, Eagle County?
Eagle County, yeah. And so, we were always concerned, people in Basalt don't like to go left to go right. And so, is it really gonna throw a lot more trips on Willets Lane? This is a little off subject, I know that you're concerned about the time, but,
I just had a quick question. You had mentioned Shadow Rock in there. Where, can you point out where, I never know where Shadow Rock is, but is it in the growth boundary or not? Like, were they an exception when they got their approval?
Shadow Rock is outside the growth boundary.
It's outside the growth
It's in this
boundary, okay.
location right here.
Okay.
Question.
Did you consider saying anything about between this proposal and what they have approved at the tree farm to the traffic impacts that collectively could happen? I mean, I'm not sure it's worth putting it in there, but
no, you could.
it's their approvals.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
P&Z wishes to
Yeah, you could
include
easily
that,
add
we
that.
could.
I think it's an excellent letter.
Agreed. Any other questions for staff before we go on? Other comments?
The tree farm is within the Basalt urban growth boundary?
Yeah, we've reflected their existing approvals on that, on our map here.
Right. But that was just decided by Eagle County.
Tree farm was approved by Eagle County, yes.
We had no say.
Even though it's in the urban growth
Well, we
boundary.
did make a recommendation, we made a lot of
Right,
recommendations.
right, okay.
Like this is.
Just I'm trying to wrap my head around, like, how does something in the urban growth boundary, but the town doesn't get to say?
The only other question I had is it worth saying, that you talk about referring back to you or James for comments, is it worth saying something that we're willing to go talk to, either talk to them or go testify at a hearing, or?
We can do that anyway.
Yeah.
I think we were planning on it.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if it's worth stating it directly.
Last quick question. What's the status of the Forest Service doing housing across the street?
That's still part of a planning process, yeah.
If no more questions, the question is, do we have a motion to approve the letter or make any
I
changes?
recommend approval.
And do you want to include with Eric's suggestion about writing about the cumulative traffic impacts with some of the recent applications?
Yeah, if you can say it pretty.
I just break pointing out.
Your motion, so.
I'll go with it.
Okay,
Still with the second?
Second the amendment.
Again, Susan, you want to take the vote since?
yes, let's do that. Bill Marin, absent Kyle Oberketter,
Yes.
Gino Rossetti,
Yes.
Eric Volzek,
Yes.
Michelle Tebow,
No.
Bertie Grauer,
Yes.
Rob Levitt, absent Cindy Hirschfeld.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Excellent.
Okay,
All right.
so Bertie, do you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not going through the chair.
It's okay. Do you have a question?
Well, I just want to apologize in front of P&Z for getting so emotional at staff.
That needed.
I think they are very capable. They've done great work. I have great confidence in them. I was just very stunned and taken off guard, so I apologize.
Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you, Bernie. Next item is an update on the Capital Needs Committee. Should I just jump in?
Yes.
So, we continue to meet every other week. I think you've seen now the survey's gone out to all the residents in Basalt, so hopefully you've taken the chance to look at that, fill it out hopefully, or give it to your significant others to fill out and spread the word about that. Our last meeting, We spent a lot of time going through the checklist, the sheet that we were looking at, the scoring sheet, and kind of bouncing around ideas on how to modify that and what that looks like. You know, as we kind of whittle down towards what our recommendation might be, taking all the advice. So similar to how we had a vote, a bunch of the other committees voted. There was some discussion on ranking how the votes happened. I think that's all gonna be kind of put forward in front of the committee as we get the results back from the public. We are also waiting on the financial breakdown for each of the potential projects and what that looks like. And I think that's gonna be our next meeting, getting more of those details. So we're still on pace to take all the results and make recommendations to council in August. That's kind of where we're at.
And you guys' most important role is to take your survey and to encourage your friends and family to take the survey. So if you guys could all do that, that would be great.
Yep. So, questions? Nope. Cool. All right.
okay.
Next item is to ratify the vote for the chair and the vice chair. I think we heard the results, Susan. I don't know how this
Yeah, we
happens
just
then.
need as Pam had presented, the vote was for Eric for chair and Bill Marin for vice chair. And we explained that we wanted to come back and have that vote ratified on the record. So if we could have a motion to appoint the chair and vice chair, and then I'll take roll call.
You need a motion to
Yep.
approve a chair and vice chair?
Yeah, to
As
appoint.
per the vote.
Have we
Yeah.
voted on a vice chair yet?
Yeah, we had explained before that the vice chair, that it was between Bill and Eric, and one would get the chair and the other one would get the vice chair.
So Bill is taking the vice chair?
That would be the motion. So the motion would be to appoint Eric as the chair and Bill Marin as the vice chair.
Yeah, I go,
Is that a motion, Gino?
Is that a motion, Gino? Is that your motion? I second it.
Okay.
All in favor?
We'll do the roll call. Bill Marin,
Not
Kyle Oberketter,
Yes.
Gino Rossetti,
yeah,
Eric Volzek,
Yes.
Michelle Tebow,
Yes.
Bernie Grauer,
Yes.
Rob Levitt, absent Cindy Hirschfeld. Yes. Okay.
Excellent.
Motion passes.
That takes us to staff updates and commissioner comments.
Okay, staff updates. We are pretty deep into construction projects, as you well know. We're, been working on Two Rivers Road, and we had our, meeting with the, builder today on building the road. And that is scheduled to start either Monday, the 12th, or Monday, the 19th of July. We have the bids out for the Basalt River Park, and they're supposed to come back on July 7th. And so we'll have the council approve them at that July 13th meeting. Stotts Mill is pouring concrete as, we'll probably start pouring tomorrow, I think, for the first apartment building for the first 12 units. So that is underway. And so we've been really, really busy. We lost our building official. Rick Fout took a job in Breckenridge. So if anybody has any ideas or suggestions for a building official, we're looking for one. You know, we've gotten, Jadwin Property is coming back. We have at the next meeting, Sobers Meadows Parcel 5. That's the one you guys did a site visit on. So that is going to be on the 20th, not on the 6th, but that kind of introductory meeting. So we'll probably have to work through what our summer schedules are. And that's an introductory meeting, but we don't want to get too backed up. Anything else I should mention, James? Car wash is kind of moving through the building permit process.
Albany Pool construction's wrapping up, should be open very soon. That's about it.
And for those of you who don't know, you do get free pool passes at the pool. So don't forget to claim your benefit Yes, I think Gino had a question.
Help me out. Has this zoning commissioners all seen the final landscape design that's out for bids?
It didn't require a P&Z review. You saw it when we looked at the Basalt River Park. So you guys looked at the plans, the final plan approval for the Basalt River Park was kind of incorporated in that. But we can share with you, we can send you the link so you can look at the plans if you'd like to look at them.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I was at those meetings, and to the best of my knowledge, I thought that there were a number of comments and or suggestions and or comments and suggestions to help make it a little bit more pleasant, more friendly to kids as well as youth, etc. And I don't know whatever happened to it. It just to me, it's still big pieces of green and a couple of ponds here and there, and I'm not even sure if trees were on it.
Yeah, why don't what, you can make an
If I
appointment
want-
with us and we can share the plans with you.
Okay,
Which landscape?
He's talking about the Basalt River Park.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is Ducal still, like, obviously they're not done yet, but are there still people working in there?
They don't have a CO yet, so yeah, they're still working in the building. Their first event will be, I think it's July 10th. So they're getting ready for a temporary CO. And so they'll have, all of their events this summer will be outside. So what they're talking about on the 10th, they won't still have their temporary CO, so we'll use porta potties for that event. So there'll be events in the lawn. And then one of their big ones is like July 31st. They're gonna close Lewis Lane for that one. And the Aspen Ski Company, I have one thing I wanted to say though. Aspen Ski Company project was started occupancy a few weeks ago, and we had a really good success with the affordable housing unit. So if you remember, they had a priority for childcare workers, and so 7 out of 8 of the units have a childcare worker in there. And so at our Basalt Child Care Coalition meeting, we heard like little stories about how this has really changed, it's been life-changing for some of the people that have been renting that. One woman had to share a bedroom with her daughter, and now they can both have their own room. And there was another story about, someone that was really commuting long distances, and now her kid can be in the Basalt school and she can be right here. So there are some really heartwarming stories behind there, and everybody been really pleased on that.
And those childcare workers are just in the valley, or they work for SKICO?
No, they're in the valley.
Okay.
So it was just a priority for,
For Mid-Valley. It was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
Mid-Valley, yeah.
Gina, we're gonna throw something else out there?
No, I'm gonna let it die.
but you know where we live if you have any questions.
But it happened at the same time, a number of us commented that when we drove by, and I'm really now talking probably maybe 14, 15 months ago, I don't remember now. But I had remarked that, I showed a photograph, the park down in Willis was filled with kids, young adults, dogs, the whole damn world, all having a good time. I took a picture of our park, and there was one person sitting on the edge of the water and another one watching their dog poop in the middle of the grass. And that was it, and it just, I hope that we have a park that we're supposedly really, really, really in love with. Because so much fighting and anguish and diversity and people's thoughts on it was probably the highlight of the 1918 or 17s, or 2017, excuse me. But I'll wait and see, I guess, quietly.
You can come and look at the plans, Gina.
Okay. It's gonna be good. You're happy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want Susan to say wash on the,
Huh?
I just want to hear Susan say wash again.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Let's have a motion to adjourn.
Let's have a motion to adjourn.
First from Bernie, a second.
I'll second.
All right, Michelle, all in favor?
Aye, let's get out of here.
Excellent. Thank you.
Alright.
Good work, everybody.
Good job, Mr. Chairman.
Nicely done.
Eric.
Thank you. I just want a reaction from you at least once a meeting like you just did. That was great.
Eric, just say that once more, my hearing.